Good wishes to all of you. History of Medieval India, Chapter 13, Consolidation of the Mughal Empire, Age of Akbar, audiobook. When Humayun was retreating from Bikaner, he was gallantly offered shelter and help by the runner of a Marcotte. It was at Amarkot in 1542 that Akbar, the greatest of the Mughal rulers, was born. When Humayun fled to Iran, young Akbar was captured by his uncle Kamran. He treated the child well on the whole. Akbar was reunited with his parents after the capture of Kandar. When Humayun died, Akbar was at Kalanaur in the Punjab, commanding operations against the Afghan rebels there. He was crowned at Kalanaur in 1556 at the young age of 13 years and 4 months. Akbar succeeded to a difficult position. The Afghans were still strong beyond Agra and were regrouping their forces under the leadership of Hemu for a final showdown. Kabul had been attacked and besieged. Sikandar Sur, the defeated Afghan ruler, was loitering in the Shivalik hills. However, Bairam Khan, the tutor of the prince and a loyal and favorite officer of Humayun, rose to the occasion. He became the Wakil of the kingdom with the title of Khan-i-Khanum and railed the Mughal forces. The threat from Hemu was considered the most serious. The area from Chunar to the border of Bengal was under the domination of Adil Shah, a nephew of Sher Shah. Hemu, who had started life as a superintendent of the markets under Islam Shah, had rapidly risen under Adil Shah. He had not lost a single one of the 22 battles he had fought. Adil Shah had appointed him the Wazir with the title of Vikramadit. They entrusted him with the task of expelling the Mughals. Hemu captured Agra and with an army of 50,000 cavalry, 500 elephants and stronger artillery, he marched upon Delhi. In a well contested battle, Hemu defeated the Mughals near Delhi and occupied the city. However, Bairam Khan took energetic steps to meet the situation. His bold stand put heart into his army and it marched on Delhi before Hemu had time to consolidate his position. The battle between the Mughals and the Afghans, forces led by Hemu, took place once again at Panipat, 5th November 1556. Although Hemu's artillery had been captured earlier by a Mughal detachment, the tide of battle was in favor of Hemu when an arrow hit him in the eye and he fainted. The leaderless Afghan army was defeated. Hemu was captured and executed. Thus, Akbar had virtually to reconquer his empire. Early phase contest with the nobility 1556 to 67. Bairam Khan remained at the helm of affairs of the empire for almost 4 years. During the period, he kept the nobility fully under control. The danger to Kabul was averted, and the territories of the empire were extended from Kabul up to Jaunpur in the east and Ajmer in the west. Gwalior was captured and forces were sent to conquer Ranthambore and Malwa. Meanwhile, Akbar was approaching the age of maturity. Bairam Khan had offended many powerful persons while he held supreme power. They complained that Bairam Khan was a Shia and that he was appointing his own supporters and Shias to high offices while neglecting the old nobles. These charges were not very serious in themselves because Bairam Khan was known for his liberal religious views. But Bairam Khan had become arrogant and failed to realize that Akbar was growing up. There was friction on small points which made Akbar realize that he could not leave the affairs of the state in someone else's hands for any length of time. Akbar played his cards deftly. He left Agra on the pretext of hunting and reached Delhi. From Delhi, he issued a firman dismissing Bairam Khan from his office and calling upon all the nobles to come and submit to him personally. Once Bairam Khan realized that Akbar wanted to take power into his own hands, he was prepared to submit, but his opponents were keen to ruin him. They heaped humiliation upon him till he was goaded to rebel. The rebellion distracted the empire for almost 6 months. Finally, Bairam Khan was forced to submit. Akbar received him cordially and gave him the option of serving at the court or anywhere outside it, or retiring to Mecca. Bairam Khan chose to go to Mecca, however, on the way he was assassinated at Patan Nagar, Ahmedabad, by an Afghan who bore him a personal grudge. Bairam's wife and young child were brought to Akbar at Agra. Akbar married Bairam Khan's young wife, who was his cousin. He brought up Bairam Khan's child as his own son. This child later became famous as Abdul Rahim Khan I Khanan and held some of the most important offices and commands in the empire. Akbar's confrontation with Bairam Khan and the kind of treatment accorded to his family subsequently shows some typical traits of Akbar's character. He was unrelenting once he had made up his mind about a course of action, but was prepared to go out of his way to generous to an opponent who had submitted to him. During Bairam Khan's rebellion, groups and individuals in the nobility and become politically active. They included Akbar's foster mother, Maham Anagha, and her relations, though Maham Aniga soon withdrew from politics. Her son, Adam Khan, was an impetuous young man who assumed independent airs when sent to command an expedition against Malwa. Removed from the command, he laid claim to the post of Wazir, and when this was not considered, he stabled the acting Wazir in his office. Akbar was enraged and had him thrown down to his death from the parapet of the fort 1561. However, it was many years before Akbar was to establish his authority fully. The Uzbeks formed a powerful group in the nobility. They held important positions in eastern Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Malwa. Although they had served the empire well by subduing the powerful Afghan groups in those areas, they had become arrogant and were defying the young ruler. Between 1561 and 1567, they broke out in rebellion several times, forcing Akbar to take the field against them. Each time Akbar was induced to pardon them. When they again rebelled in 1565, Akbar was so exasperated that he vowed to make Jaunpur his capital till he had rooted them out. Meanwhile, a rebellion by the Mirzas, who were Timurids and were related to Akbar by marriage, threw the areas west of modern Uttar Pradesh into confusion. Encouraged by these rebellions, Akbar's half brother Mirza Hakim, who had seized control of Kabul, advanced into the Punjab and besieged Lahore. The Uzbek rebel nobles formally proclaimed him their ruler. This was the most serious crisis that Akbar had to face since Hamu's capture of Delhi. However, Akbar's grit and a certain amount of luck enabled him to trump. From Jaunpur, he marched to Lahore, forcing Mirza Hakim to retire. Meanwhile, the rebellion of the Mirzas was crushed, with the Mirzas fleeing to Malwa and thence to Gujarat. Akbar marched back from Lahore to Jaunpur. Crossing the river Yamuna near Allahabad at the height of the rainy season, he surprised the rebels led by the Uzbek nobles and completely routed them. 1567. The Uzbek leaders were killed in the battle, thus bringing their protracted rebellion to an end. All the rebellious nobles, including those among them who had been dreaming of independence, were cowed down. Akbar was now free to concentrate on the expansion of the empire. Early expansion on the empire, 1560 to 76, during Bairam Khan's regency, the territories of the Mughal Empire had been expanded rapidly. Apart from Ajmer, an important conquest during this period was that of Malwa. Malwa was being ruled at that time by a young prince, Baj Bahadur. His accomplishments included a mastery of music and poetry. Stories about the romance of Baz Bahadur and Rupmati, who was famous for her beauty as well as for music and poetry, are well known. During his time, Mandu had become a celebrated center of her music. The army, however, had been neglected by Baj Bahadur, the expedition against Malwa was led by Adham Khan, son of Akbar's foster mother, Maham Anga. Baz Bahadur was badly defeated 1561 and the Mughals took valuable spoils including Roopmati. However, she preferred to commit suicide to being dragged to Adam Khan's harem. Due to the senseless cruelties of Adham Khan and his successor, there was a reaction against the Mughals which enabled Baj Bahadur to recover Malwa. After dealing with Bairam Khan's rebellion, Akbar sent another expedition to Malwa. Baj Bahadur had to flee, and for some time he took shelter with the Rana of Mewar after wandering from one area to another. He finally repaired to Akbar's court and was enrolled as a Mughal Mansabdar. The extensive court of Malwa thus came under Mughal rule. At about the same time, Mughal arms overran the kingdom of Gar Katanga. The kingdom of Gar Katanga included the Narmada Valley and the northern portions of present day Madhya Pradesh. It had been welded together by Amandas, who flourished in the second half of the 15th century. Amandas had helped Bahadur Shah of Gujarat in the conquest of Raisan and had received from him the title of Sangram Shah. The kingdom of Gar Katanga included a number of Gond and Rajput principalities. It was the most powerful kingdom set up by the Gonds. It is said that the ruler commanded 20,000 cavalry, a large infantry, and 1,000 elephants. We do not know, however, to what extent these figures are dependable. Sangram Shah had further strengthened his position by marrying his son to a princess of the famous Chandel rulers of Mahoba. This princess who is famous as Durgavati, became a widow soon afterwards, but she installed her minor son on the throne and ruled the country with great vigor and courage. She was a good marksman, both with a gun and bow and arrow. She was fond of hunting, and according to a contemporary, it was her custom that whenever she heard that a tiger had appeared, she did not drink water till she had shot it. She fought many successful battles against her neighbors, including Baj Bahadur of Malwa. This border conflict apparently continued even after Malwa had been conquered by the Mughals. Meanwhile, the cupidity of Asaf Khan, the Mughal governor of Allahabad, was roused by stories of the fabulous wealth and beauty of the Rani. Asaf Khan advanced with 10,000 cavalry from the side of Bundelkhand. Some of the semi independent rulers of Garha found it a convenient moment on throw of the Gond yoke. The Rani was thus left with a small force. Though wounded, she fought on gallantly. Finding that the battle was lost and that she was in danger of being captured, she stabbed herself to death. Asaf Khan then stormed the capital, Chauragarh, near modern Jabalpur. He rose to the rank of 2000. According to tradition, he was buried near a tank at Ujjain, where his favorite consort Rupamati was also buried. So much plunder in jewels, gold, silver, and other things were taken that it is impossible to compute even a fraction of it, says Abul Fazl. Out of all the plunder, Asaf Khan sent only 200 elephants to the court and retained all the rest for himself. Kamla Devi, the younger sister of the Rani, was sent to the court. When Akbar had dealt with the rebellion of the Uzbek nobles, he forced Asaf Khan to disgorge his illegal gains. He restored the kingdom of Gar Katanga to Chandra Shah, the younger son of Sangram Shah, after talking after taking 10 forts to round off the kingdom of Malwa. Rajasthan and Gujarat. During the next 10 years, Akbar brought the major part of Rajasthan under his control and also conquered Gujarat and Bengal. A major step in his campaign against the Rajput states was the siege of Chittor. This fortress, which had faced a number of sieges in its history, was considered key to central Rajasthan. It commanded the shortest route from Agra to Gujarat. Above all, it was a symbol of the Rajput spirit of resistance. Akbar realized that without conquering Chittor, he could not induce the other Rajput rulers to accept his suzerainty. Chittor fell 1568 after a gallant siege of 6 months. On the advice of his nobles, Rana Uday Singh had retired to the hills, leaving the famous warriors Jaimal and Patta in charge of the fort. Many peasants from the surrounding area had also taken shelter within the fort and actively aided the defenders when the Mughals stormed the fort. These peasants and many of the Rajput warriors, amounting to 30,000, were massacred the first and the last time that Akbar indulged in such carnage. The Rajput warriors died after extracting as much vengeance as possible. In honor of the gallant Jaimal and Patta, Akbar ordered that two stone statues of these warriors seated on elephants be erected outside the chief gate of the fort at Agra. The fall of Chittor was followed by the conquest of Ranthambore, reputed to be the most powerful fortress in Rajasthan. Jodhpur had been conquered earlier. As a result of these victories, most of the Rajput Rajas, including those of Bikaner and Jaisalmer, submitted to Akbar. Only Mewar continued to resist. Gujarat had been in a sorry state since the death of Bahadur Shah. The fertility of its soil, its highly developed crafts, and its importance as the center of the import export trade with the outside world had made it a prize worth fighting for. Akbar also laid claim to it because Humayun had ruled over it for some time. An additional reason was that the Mirzas who had failed in their rebellion near Delhi had taken shelter in Gujarat. Akbar was not prepared for such a rich province to become a rival center of power. In 1572, Akbar advanced on Ahmedabad via Ajmer. Ahmedabad surrendered without a fight. Akbar then turned his attention to the Mirzas, who held Broch, Baroda, and Surat. At Cambay, Akbar saw the sea for the first time and rode on it in a boat. A group of Portuguese merchants also came and met him for the first time. The Portuguese dominated the Indian seas by this time and had ambitions of establishing an empire in India. Akbar's conquest of Gujarat frustrated these designs. While Akbar's armies were besieging Surat, Akbar crossed the river Mahi and assaulted the Mirzas with a small body of 200 men, which included Man Singh and Bhagwan Das of Amber. For some time, Akbar's life was in danger, but the impetuosity of his charge routed the Mirzas. Thus, Gujarat came under Mughal control. However, as soon as Akbar had turned his back, rebellions broke out all over Gujarat. Hearing the news, Akbar marched out of Agra and traversed across Rajasthan in 9 days by means of camels, horses, and carts. On the 11th day, he reached Ahmedabad. In this journey, which normally took 6 weeks, only 3,000 soldiers were able to keep up with Akbar. With him, he defeated an enemy force of 20,000 1573. After this, Akbar turned his attention to Bengal. The Afghans had continued to dominate Bengal and Bihar. They had also overrun Odisha and killed its ruler. However, in order not to give offense to the Mughals, the Afghan ruler had not formally declared himself king, but read the khutbah in Akbar's name. Internal fights among the Afghans and the declaration of independence by the new ruler, Daud Khan, gave Akbar the excuse he was seeking. Akbar advanced with a strong flotilla of boats accompanying him. The Afghan king was believed to possess a large army consisting of 40,000 well mounted cavalry and infantry of about 150,000, several thousand guns and elephants, and a strong flotilla of war boats. If Akbar had not been as careful and the Afghans had a better leader, the contest between Humayun and Sher Shah might well have been repeated. Akbar first captured Patna, thus securing Mughal communications in Bihar. He then returned to Agra, leaving Khan I Khanun, Munaim Khan, an experienced officer in charge of the campaign. The Mughal armies invaded Bengal, and after hard campaigning, Daud was forced to sue for peace. He rose in rebellion soon afterwards, though the Mughal position in Bengal and Bihar was still weak. The Mughal armies were better organized and led. In a stiff battle in Bihar in 1576, Daud Khan was defeated and executed on the spot. Thus ended the last Afghan kingdom in North India. It also brought to an end the first phase of Akbar's expansion of the empire. Administration. During the decade following the conquest of Gujarat, Akbar found time to look at the administrative problems of the empire. The system of administration elaborated by Sher Shah had fallen into confusion after the death of Islam Shah. Akbar therefore had to start afresh. One of the most important problems facing Akbar was the system of land revenue administration. Sher Shah had instituted a system by which the cultivated area was measured and a crop rate array was drawn up, fixing the dues of the peasant crop wise on the basis of the productivity of land. This schedule was converted every year into a central schedule of prices. Akbar adopted Sher Shah's system, but it was soon found that the fixing of a central schedule of prices often led to considerable delays and resulted in great hardship to the peasantry. Since the prices fixed were generally these prevailing at the imperial court and were higher than those in the countryside, the peasants therefore had to part with a larger share of their produce. At first, Akbar reverted to a system of annual assessment. The Quanangos, who were hereditary holders of land as well as local officials conversant with the local conditions, were ordered to report on the actual produce, state of cultivation, local prices, etc. But in many areas, the Quanangos were dishonest and concealed the real produce. Annual assessments also resulted in great difficulty for the peasants and for the state. After returning from Gujarat 1573, Akbar paid personal attention to the land revenue system. Officials called Karoris were appointed all over North India. They were responsible for the collection of a crore of dams, 2,50,000, and also checked the facts and figures supplied by the Quanangos. On the basis of the information provided by them regarding the actual produce, local prices, productivity, etc., in 1580, Akbar instituted a new system called the Dahsala. Under this system, the average produce of different crops as well as the average prices prevailing over the last 10 years were calculated. One third of the average produce was the state share. The state demand was, however, stated in cash. This was done by converting the state share into money on the basis of a schedule of average prices over the past 10 years. Thus, the produce of a bigger of land under share was given in amounts, but on the basis of average prices, the state demand was fixed in rupees per bigha. Later, a further improvement was made. Not only were local prices taken into account, but parganas having the same type of productivity were also grouped into separate assessment circles. Thus, the peasant was required to pay on the basis of local productivity as well as local prices. There were a number of advantages of this system. As soon as the areas owned by the peasant had been measured by means of bamboos linked with iron rings, the peasants as well as the state knew what the dues were. The peasant was given remission in the land revenue if crops failed on accounts of drought, floods, etc. The system of measurement and the assessment based upon it is called the Jabti system. Akbar introduced this system from Lahore to Allahabad and in Malwa and Gujarat. The Dashala system was a further development of the Jabti system. A number of other systems of assessment were also followed under Akbar. The most common and perhaps the oldest was called Batai or Galla Bakshi. In this system, the produce was divided between the peasants and the state in fixed proportion. The crop was divided after it had been threshed, or when it had been cut and tied in stacks, or while it was standing in the field. The system was considered a very fair one, but it needed an army of honest officials to be present at the time of the ripening or reaping of the crops. The peasants were allowed to choose between Jabti and Batai under certain conditions. The such a choice was given when the crops had been run. Under Batai, the peasants were given the choice of paying in cash or in kind, though the state preferred cash in case of crops such as cotton, indigo, oilseeds, sugarcane, etc. The state demand was invariably in cash, hence these were called cash crops. A third system which was widely used in Akbar's time was Nasak. It was a rough calculation of the amount payable by the peasant on the basis of what he had been paying in the past. Hence, some modern historians think that it was merely a system of computing the peasant's past dues, not a different system of assessment. Others think that it meant a rough appraisement, both on the basis of inspection of the crops and past experience, and thereby fixing the amount to be paid by the village as a whole. It is called concurt or estimation. Other local methods of assessment also continued in some areas in fixing the land revenue. Continuity of cultivation was taken into account. Land which remained under cultivation almost every year was called polage. When it remained uncultivated, it was called parati, fallow. Parati land paid at the full polage rate when it was cultivated. Land which had been followed for 2 or 3 years was called chachar and banjar if longer than that. These are assessed at a concessional rates, the revenue demanded gradually rising till the full or polage rate was paid in the fifth or the eighth year. In this way, the state helped in bringing virgin and uncultivated wasteland under cultivation. Land was classified further into good, middling, and bad. One third of the average produce was the state demand, but it varied according to the productivity of the land, the method of assessment, etc. Akbar was deeply interested in the improvement and extension of cultivation. He asked the Amir to act like a father to the peasants. He was to advance money by way of loans, takavi, uh, to the peasants for seeds, implements, animals, etc. in times of need, and to recover them in easy installments. He was to try and induce the peasants to plug as much land as possible and to sow superior quality crops. The jamindars of the area were also enjoined to cooperate in the tasks. The jamindar had a hereditary right to take a share of the produce. The peasants too had a hereditary right to cultivate their land and could not be ejected as long as they paid the land revenue. The Dakshala was not a 10-year settlement, nor was it a permanent one, the state retaining the right to modify it. However, with some changes, Akbar's settlement remained the basis of the land revenue system of the Mughal Empire till the end of the 17th century. The Jabti system is associated with the Raja Todhar Mal and is sometimes called Todhar Mal's Bandobast. Todhar Mal was a brilliant revenue officer who had first served under Sher Shah, but he was only one of a team of brilliant revenue officials who came to the forefront under Akbar. The Deshala system was a result of their combined laborers, Mansabdari system, and the army. Akbar would not have been able to expand his empire and maintain his hold over it without a strong army. For this purpose, it was necessary for him to organize the nobility as well as his army. Akbar realized both these objectives by means of the Mansabdari system. Under this system, every officer was assigned a rank Mansab. The lower rank was 10 and the highest rank was 5,000 for the nobles. Princes of the blood received higher mansabs towards the end of Akbar's reign. The highest rank a noble could attain was raised from 5,000 to 7,000, and two premier nobles of the empire, Mirza Aziz Goka and Raja Man Singh, were honored with the rank of 7,000 each. This limit was retained basically till the end of Aurangzeb's reign. The Mansab system under Akbar developed gradually. At first, there was only one rank Mansab from the 40th year 1594 to 95. The ranks were divided into two, Jat and Sawar. The word Jat means personal, It fixed the personal status of a person and also the salary due to him. The Savar rank indicated the number of cavalrymen Savars a person was required to maintain. A person who was required to maintain as many Savars as his Jat rank was placed in the first category of that rank. If he maintained half or more, then in the second category, and if he maintained less than half, then in the third category. Thus, there were three categories in every rank mansab. Great care was taken to ensure that the savars recruited by the nobles were experienced and well mounted. For this purpose, a descriptive role chehra of the soldiers was maintained, and his horse was branded with the imperial marks. This was called the dark system. Every noble had to bring his contingent for periodic inspection before persons appointed by the emperor for the purpose. The horses were carefully inspected, and only good quality horses of Arabic and Iraqi breed were employed. Ideally, for every 10 cavalrymen, the Mansabdar had to maintain 20 horses. This was so because horses had to be rested while on march and replacements were necessary in time of war. A savar with only one horse was considered only half a savar. The Mughal cavalry force remained an efficient one as long as the 10 to 20 rule was adhered to. Provision was made for the contingents of the nobles to be mixed ones that is drawn from all the groups Mughal, Pathan, Hindustani and Rajput. Thus Akbar tried to weaken the forces of tribalism and patriotism. Only the Mughal and Rajput nobles were allowed to have contingents exclusive of Mughals or Rajputs. But in course of time, mixed contingents becomes a general rule. Apart from cavalrymen, bowmen, musketeers, bandkuchi, sappers, and miners were also recruited in the contingents. Their salaries varied. The average salary of a savar was Rs 20 per month. Iranians and Turanians received a higher salary than Rajputs and Hindustanis. Indian Muslims and infantrymen received about Rs 3 per month. The salary due to the soldiers was added to the salary of the Mansabdar, who was paid by assigning to him a jagir. Sometimes the Mansabdars were paid in cash. It is wrong to think that Akbar did not like the jagir system and tried to do away with it, but failed as it was too deeply entrenched. A jagir did not confer any hereditary rights on the holder or disturb any of the existing rights in the area. It only meant that the land revenue due to the state was to be paid to the Jagirdar. The Mansabdari The salary due to the soldiers was added to the salary of the Mansabdar, who was paid by assigning to him a jagir. Sometimes the Mansabdars were paid in cash. It is wrong to think that Akbar did not like the jagir system and tried to do away with it, but failed as it was too deeply entrenched. A jagir did not confer an hereditary rights on the holder or disturb any of the existing rights in the area. It only meant that the land revenue due to the state was to be paid to the Jagirdar. The Mansabdari system, as it developed under the Mughals, was a distinctive and unique system which did not have any exact parallel outside India. The origins of the Mansabdari system can perhaps be traced back to Genghis Khan, who organized his army on a decimal basis, the lowest unit of command being 10 and the highest 10,000. Toman, whose commander was called Khan. The Mongol system influenced to some extent the military system of the Delhi Sultanate, for we hear of commanders of 100 Sadis and 1000 Hazars. Under the Sirs, we have nobles who were designated commanders of 20,000 or 10,000 or 5,000 Savars. But we do not quite know the system which was prevalent under Babur and Humayun. Persons holding rank below 500 Jat were called Mansabdars, those from 500 to below 2500 were called Amirs, and those holding ranks of 2500 and above were called Amir I Umda or Umda I Azam. However, the word Mansabdar is sometimes used for all three categories. Apart from status, this classification had a significance. An Amir or an Amir I Umda could have another Amir or Mansabdar serve under him, but a Mansabdar could not do so. Thus, a person with a rank of 5000 could have under him a Mansabdar up to rank of 500 Jat, and one with a rank of 4000 could have a Mansabdar up to a rank of 400 Jat, and so on. The categories were not rigid. Persons were generally appointed at a low mansub and gradually promoted, depending upon their merits and the favor of the emperor. A person could also be denominated as a mark of punishment. Thus, there was only one serving, including both army men and civilians. People who entered service at the lower rung of the ladder could hope to rise to the position of an Amir or even Amir I Umda. To that extent, careers were thrown open to talent. In addition to meeting his personal expenses, the Mansabdar had to maintain out of his salary a stipulated quota of horses, elephants, beasts of burden, camels and mules, and carts. Thus, a Mansabdar holding a Jat rank of 5000 had to maintain 340 horses, 100 elephants, 400 camels, 100 mules, and 160 carts. Later, these were maintained centrally, but the Mansabdar had to pay for them out of his salary. The horses were classified into six categories and the elephants into five according to quality, the number and quality of horses and elephants being carefully prescribed. This was so because horses and elephants of high breed were greatly prized and were considered indispensable for an efficient military mission. Cavalry and elephants, in fact, formed the main basis of the army in those days, though the artillery was rapidly becoming more important. The transport corps was vital for making the army more mobile. For meeting the expenses, the Mughal Mansabdars were paid handsomely. A Mansabdar with a rank of 5000 could get a salary of 4 Rs 30,000 per month. A Mansabdar of 3000 Rs 17,000 and of 1000 Rs 8,200 per month. Even a humble edit holding a rank of 100 could get 7,000 per year. Roughly a quarter of these salaries were spent on meeting the cost of the transport crops. Even then, the Mughal Mansabdars formed the highest paid service in the world. Akbar kept a large body of cavalrymen as his bodyguards. He kept a big stable of horses. He also maintained a body of gentlemen troopers. Ahadis. These were persons of noble lineage who did not have the means of raising a contingent or were persons who had impressed the emperor. They were allowed to keep 8 to 10 horses and received a high salary of about Rs 800 a month. They were answerable only to the emperor and had a separate muster master. These people could be compared to the knights of medieval Europe. Akbar was very fond of horses and elephants. He also maintained a strong park of artillery. Akbar was specially interested in guns. He devised detachable guns which could be carried on an elephant or a camel. There were also heavy siege guns for breaching forts. Some of these were so heavy that 100 or 200 oxen and several elephants were needed to pull them. A strong park of light artillery accompanied the emperor whenever he moved out of the capital. We do not know whether Akbar ever had any plans of building a navy. The lack of a strong navy remained a key weakness of the Mughal Empire. If Akbar had the time, he might have paid attention to it. He did build an efficient flotilla of war boats which he used in his eastern campaigns. Some of the boats were over 30 meters long and displaced over 350 tons. Organization of government. Hardly any changes were made by Akbar in the organization of local government. The Pargana and the Sarkar continued as before. The chief officers of the Sarkar were the Fauzdar and the Amalguzar, the former being in charge of law and order and the later responsible for the assessment and collection of the land revenue. The territories of the empire were divided into Jagir, Kalisa, and Inam. Income from Kalisa villages went directly to the royal exchequer. The Inam lands were those which were allotted to landed religious men. Jagirs were allotted to nobles and members of the royal family, including the queens. The Amal Guzar was required to exercise a general supervision over all types of holdings so that the imperial rules and regulations for the assessment and collection of land revenue were followed uniformly. Only autonomous rajas were left free to continue their traditional and revenue system in their territories. Even their Akbar encouraged them to follow the imperial system. Akbar paid great attention to the organization of the central and provincial governments. His system of central government was based on the structure of government which had evolved under the Delhi Sultanate, but the functions of the various departments were carefully reorganized and meticulous rules and regulations were laid down for the conduct of affairs. Thus, he gave a new shape to the system and breathed a new life into it. The Central Asian and Timurid tradition was of having an all powerful wazir under whom various heads of departments functioned. He was the principal link between the ruler and the administration. In course of time, a separate department, the military department, had come into being. The judiciary had always been separate, thus, in practice, the concept of an all powerful wazir had been given up. However, in his capacity as Wakil, Bairam Khan had exercised the powers of an all powerful wazir. Akbar reorganized the central machinery of administration on the basis of the division of power between various departments and of checks and balances. While the post of Vakil was not abolished, it was stripped of all power and became largely decorative. The post was given to important nobles from time to time, but they played little part in administration. The head of the revenue department continued to be the Wazir. Under Akbar, generally the Wazir did not hold a high mansab. Many nobles had mansabs which were higher than this. Thus, he was no longer the principal advisor to the ruler, but one who was an expert in revenue affairs. To emphasize this point, Akbar generally used the title of Diwan or Diwan-i-Ala in preference to the word Wazir. Sometimes the several persons were asked to discharge the duties of Diwan jointly. The Diwan was responsible for all income and expenditure and held control over Kalisa, Jagir, and Inam lands. The head of the military department was called the Mir Bakshi. It was the Mir Bakshi and not the Diwan who was considered the head of the nobility. Therefore, only the leading grandees were appointed to this post. Recommendations for appointment to Munsabs or for promotions, etc., were made to the emperor through the Mir Bakshi. Once the emperor had accepted a recommendation, it was sent to the Diwan for confirmation and for assigning a Zagir on the appointee. The same process was followed in case of promotions. The Mir Bakshi was also the head of the intelligence and information agencies of the empire. Intelligence officers, barits, and new reporters, Wakya Navis, were posted to all parts of the empire. The reports were presented to the emperor at the court through the Mir Bakshi. It will thus be seen that the Diwan and the Amir Bakshi were almost on par and supported and checked each other. The third important officer was the Mir Saman. He was in charge of the imperial household, including the supply of all the provisions and articles for the use of the inmates of the harem or the female apartments. Many of these articles were manufactured under supervision in royal workshops called karkanas. Only nobles who enjoyed the complete confidence of the emperor were appointed to this office. The maintenance of adequacy at the court, the control of the royal bodyguard, etc., were all under the overall supervision of this officer. The fourth important department was the judicial department headed by the chief qazi. This post was sometimes combined with that of the chief Sadar, who was responsible for all charitable and religious endowments. Thus, it was a post which carried considerable power and patronage. It fell into bad repute due to the corruption and venality of Akbar's chief Qazi, Abdul Nabi. After instituting a careful scrutiny of the grants held by various persons, Akbar separated the Inam lands from the Jagir and Khalisa lands and divided the empire into six circles for purposes of grant of Inam lands and their administration. Two features of the Inam grants are noteworthy. First, Akbar made it a deliberate part of his policy to grant Inam lands to all persons, irrespective of their religious faith and beliefs. Sanats of grant to various Hindu maths made by Akbar are still preserved. Second, Akbar made it a rule that half of the Inam land should consist of a cultivable wasteland. Thus, the Inam holders were encouraged to extend cultivation in order to make himself accessible to the people as well as to the ministers. Akbar carefully divided his time. The day started with the emperor's appearance at the Jaraka of the palace. Large numbers of people assembled daily to have a glimpse of the ruler and to present petitions to him if necessary. These positions were attended to immediately or in the open darbar Divanayam, which followed and lasted till midday. The emperor then retired to his apartments for meals and rest. Separate time was allotted to the ministers for confidential consultations. The ministers were generally called to a chamber which was situated near Akbar's bathing apartment, Gushal Khana. In course of time, this private consultation chamber came to be called Gushal Khana. Akbar divided the empire into 12 subas in 1580. These were Bengal, Bihar, Allahabad, Awadh, Agra, Delhi, Lahore, Multan, Kabul, Ajmer, Malwa, and Gujarat. A governor means Subedar, a Diwan, a Bakshi, a Sadar, a Qazi, and a Wakya Navis were appointed to each of the provinces. Thus, a orderly government based on the principle of checks and balances was extended to the provinces. Relations with the Rajputs. Akbar's relation with the Rajputs have to be seen against the wider background of Mughal policy towards the powerful Rajas and Jamindars of the country. When Humayun came back to India, he embarked upon a deliberate policy of trying to win over these elements. Abul Fazl says that in order to soothe the minds of the Jamindars, he entered into matrimonial relations with them. Thus, when Jamal Khan Mewati, who was the cousin of Hassan Khan Mewati, one of the great Jamindars of India, submitted to Humayun, they later married one of his beautiful daughters, himself and married the younger sister to Bairam Khan. In course of time, Akbar expanded and elaborated this policy. Baramal, the ruler of Amber, had come to Akbar's court at Agra immediately after his ascension. He had made a favorable impression on the young king, for when people were running helter skelter from a maddened elephant, the Rajputs under Bharamal had stood firm. In 1562, when Akbar was going to Ajmer, he learned that Bharamal was being harassed by the local Mughal governor. Bharamal paid a personal homage to Akbar and cemented the alliance by marrying his younger daughter, Harka Bhai, to Akbar. Marriages between Muslim rulers and the daughters of Hindu potentates were not unusual. Many cases of such alliances in various parts of the country during the 14th and 15th centuries have been cited earlier. Maldeo, the powerful ruler of Jodhpur, had married his daughter Bai Khanka to Sultan Muhammad of Gujarat and another Lal Bhai to the Sir ruler, probably Islam Shah Sur. Bharmal himself had married his elder daughter to Hazi Khan Pathan, who had been the virtual ruler of Alwar after the death of Islam Shah Sur. Most of these marriages had not led to the establishment of any stable personal relations between the concerned families. The girls were generally lost to their families and never came back after marriage. Akbar followed a different policy. He gave complete religious freedom to his Hindu wives and gave an honored place to their parents and relations in the nobility. Baramal was made a high grandee. His son Bhagwan Das rose to the rank of 5000 and his grandson Mansingh to the rank of 7,000. This rank was accorded by Akbar to only one other noble, Aziz Khan Kokha, his foster brother. Akbar emphasized his special relationship with the Kachavaha ruler in other ways as well. The infant prince Danyal was sent to Amber to be brought up by Baramal's wives in 1572 when Akbar dashed to Gujarat. Baramal was placed in charge of Agra where all the royal ladies were residing, a signal honor given only to nobles who were either relations or close confidants of the emperor. But Akbar did not insist upon matrimonial relations as a precondition. No matrimonial relations were entered into with her Hadas of Ranthambore, yet they remained high in Akbar's favor. Rao Surjan Hada was placed in charge of Kantanga and rose to the rank of 2000. Similarly, no matrimonial relations were entered into with her Hadas of Ranthambore, yet they remained high in Akbar's favor. Rao Surjan Hada was placed in charge of Kantanga and rose to the rank of 2000. Similarly, no matrimonial relations were entered into with the rulers of Sirohi and Banswara when they submitted to Akbar later on. Akbar's Rajput policy was combined with a policy of broad religions toleration. In 1564, he abolished the jizya, which was sometimes used by the ulama to humiliate non Muslims and was often considered a symbol of Muslim domination and superiority. He had earlier abolished the pilgrim tax and the practice of forcible conversion of prisoners of war. Following the conquest of Chittor, most of the leading Rajput rulers had accepted Akbar's suzerainty and paid personal homage to him. The rulers of Jaisalmer and Bikaner had also entered into matrimonial relations with Akbar, the only state which had steadfastly refused to accept Mughal suzerainty was Mewar. Although Chittor and the plain area around it had come under Mughal domination, Udaipur and the hilly area which formed the larger part of Mewar had remained under the control of the Rana. In 1572, Rana Pratap succeeded Rana Uday Singh to the Gaddi. A series of embassies were sent by Akbar to Rana Pratap to persuade him to accept Mughal sovereignty and to do personal homage. These embassies, including the one led by Mansingh, were courteously received by the Rana. The story that he insulted Man Singh is not a historical fact and is uncharacteristic of the Rana, who always behaved in a chivalrous and courteous manner even towards his opponents. Man Singh's embassy was followed by one under Bhagwat, Bhagwan Das and another under Raja Todhar Mal. At one time, it seems that the Rana was prepared for a compromise. He put on the imperial robe sent by Akbar and sent his son Amar Singh to the court with Bhagwant Das to pay homage to Akbar and accept his service. But no final agreement could be reached as the proud Rana was not prepared to accept Akbar's demand for tendering personal homage. Also, it seems that the Mughals wanted to keep hold of Chittor, which was not acceptable to the Rana. Early in 1576, Akbar moved to Ajmer and deputed Raja Man Singh with a force of 5,000 to lead a campaign against the Rana. In anticipation of this move, the Rana had devastated the entire territory up to Chittor so that the Mughal forces might get no food or fodder. He had also fortified all the passes in the hills. A furious battle between the two sides was waged at Haldighati below a narrow defile leading to Kumbhalgarh, which was then the Rana's capital. Apart from select Rajput forces, the Rana's van consisted of the Afghan contingent led by Hakim Khan Sur. This battle of Haldighati was not a struggle between the Hindus and the Muslims or between the Indians and the foreigners. A small force of the Bills whom the Rana had befriended was also present. The Rana's forces are put at 3000. The onslaught by the Rajputs and the Afghans threw the Mughal forces into disarray. But the rumors that Akbar had arrived in person rallied them. With fresh Mughal reinforcements, the tide of battle began to turn against the Rajputs. Seeing this, the Rana escaped. The Mughal forces were to try to pursue him, but after some time, they advanced through the pass and occupied Gogunda, a strong point which had been evacuated by the Rana earlier. This was the last time the Rana engaged in a pitched battle with the Mughals. Henceforth, he resorted to methods of guerrilla warfare. The defeat at Haldigati did not weaken Rana Pratap's resolve to fight on for independence. However, the cause for which he stood had already been lost. Most of the Rajput states had accepted Mughal sovereignty. By his policy of introducing the Rajput Rajas into Mughal service and treating them on par with the Mughal grandees, according broad religious toleration to his subjects and his courteous behavior to his former opponents. Akbar succeeded in cementing his alliance with the Rajput rulers. Therefore, Rana Pratap's refusal to bow before the Mughals had little effect on most of the other Rajput states, which realized that in the existing situation, it was impossible for small states to stand out for long in favor of complete independence. Moreover, by allowing a large measure of autonomy to the Rajput Rajas, Akbar established an empire which those Rajput Rajas did not consider harmful to their best interest. Rana Pratap's defiance of the mighty Mughal empire, almost alone and unaided by the other Rajput states, constitutes a glorious saga of Rajput valor and the spirit of sacrifice for cherished principles. Rana Pratap's methods of sporadic warfare was later elaborated further by Malik Ambar, the Deccani general, and by Shivaji. It is not necessary to discuss in detail the struggle between Akbar and Rana Pratap. For some time, Akbar exerted relentless pressure on the Raja. The Mughals overran the states of Dhangarpur, Banswara, Sirohi, etc., which were dependent areas of Mewar and had supported Rana Pratap. Akbar concluded separate treaties with these states, thus further isolating Mewar. The Rana was hunted from forest to forest and from valley to valley. Both Kumbhalgarh and Udaipur were occupied by the Mughals. The Raja underwent great hardships, but thanks to the support of the Bill chiefs, he continued his defense. The Mughal pressure relaxed after 1517 and due to a serious revolt in Bihar and Bengal in protest against some reforms effected by Akbar. Akbar's half brother Mirza Hakim made an incursion into the Punjab in order to fish in troubled waters. Thus, Akbar had to face a more serious internal crisis. In 1585, Akbar moved to Lahore to watch the situation in the northwest, which had become dangerous. He remained there for the next 12 years. No Mughal expeditions was sent against Rana Pratap after 1585. Taking advantage of the situation, Rana Pratap recovered many of his territories, including Kumbhalgarh and the areas near Chittor. But he could not recover Chittor itself. During this period, he built a new capital, Chawat, near modern Dangarpur. He died in 1597 at the young age of 51 due to an internal injury incurred by him while trying to draw a stiff bow. Apart from Eva, Akbar had to face opposition in Marwar as well. Following the death of Maldhyo 1562, there was a dispute for succession between his sons. The younger son of Maldhyo, Chandrasen, who was the son of the favorite queen of Maldhyo, succeeded to the Gadhi. Due to the pressure of the Mughals, he had to give parts of his country in Patta to his elder brothers. But Chandrasen did not like this arrangement and after some time rose in rebellion. Akbar now took Marwar under direct Mughal administration, possibly One reason for this was his desire to safeguard the Mughal supply route to Gujarat, which passed through Jodhpur. After its conquest, Akbar appointed Rai Singh Bikneri to look after Jodhpur. Chandrasen resisted valiantly and waged a guerrilla warfare. But after some time, he had to seek refuge in Mewar. Even there, he was hunted from place to place by the Mughals. He died in 1581. A couple of years later, Akbar conferred Jodhpur upon Uday Singh, the elder brother of Chandra Singh. To strengthen his position, Uday Singh married his daughter, Jagat Gosain or Jodhbhai, as she came to be called, to Akbar's eldest son, Salim. Unlike the Dola form of earlier marriages, the bridegroom's party went to the Raja's house in Bharat, and a number of Hindu practices were followed. This happened when Akbar was residing at Lahore. Akbar also had close personal relations with the rulers of Bikaner and Bondi, who served in various campaigns with distinction. In 1593, when the son-in-law of Rai Singh of Bikaner died after a fall from his palki, Akbar went personally to the Raja's house to console him and dissuaded his daughter from performing sati, as her children were young. The Rajput policy of Akbar proved beneficial to the Mughal state as well as to the Rajputs. The alliance secured to the Mughal Empire the services of the bravest warriors in India. The steadfast loyalty of the Rajputs became an important factor in the consolidation and expansion of the empire. The alliance ensured peace in Rajasthan and enabled the Rajputs to serve in far flung parts of the empire without worrying about the safety of their homelands. By being enrolled into imperial service, important positions in the empire were open to the Rajput Rajas. Thus, Bhagwan Das of Amber was appointed joint governor of Lahore, while his son Mansingh was appointed the governor of Bihar and Bengal. Other Rajput Rajas were placed in charge of strategic provinces such as Agra, Ajmer, and Gujarat. At various times, as high grandees of the empire, they were granted jagirs in addition to their hereditary kingdoms, thus augmenting their resources. Akbar's Rajput policy was continued by his successors Jahangir and Shah Jahan. Jahangir, whose mother was a Rajput princess, had himself married a Kashwaha princess as well as Jodhpur princess. Princes of the houses of Jaisalmer and Bikaner were also married to him. Jahangir gave positions of honor to the rulers of all these houses. The main achievement of Jahangir, however, was the settlement of the outstanding dispute with Mewar. Rana Pratap had been succeeded by his son Amar Singh. Akbar had sent a series of expeditions against Amar Singh in order to force him to accept his conditions. Jahangir himself was sent him twice, but could achieve little. After his accession in 1605, Jahangir took up the matter energetically. 3 successive campaigns were launched, but they could not break the Rana's will. In 1613, Jahangir himself reached Ajmer to direct the campaign. Prince Khurram, later Shah Jahan, was deputed with a large army to invade the mountainous parts of Mewar. The heavy pressure of the Mughal army, the depopulation of the country, and renovation of agriculture at last produced their effect. Some Sardars defected to the Mughals, many others pressured the Rana for peace. The Rana's son Karan Singh, who was deputed to proceed to Jahangir's court, was graciously received. Jahangir got up from the throne, embraced him in Darbar, and loaded him with gifts. To save the Rana's prestige, Jahangir did not insist upon the Rana paying personal homage to him or entering the royal service. Prince Karan was accorded the rank of 5000, which had been earlier accorded to the rules of Jodhpur, Bikaner, and Amber. He was to serve the Mughal emperor with a contingent of 1500 Savars. All the territories of Mewar, including Chittor, were restored. But in view of the strategic importance of Chittor, it was stipulated that its fortifications would not be repaired. Thus, Jahangir completed the task begun by Akbar and further strengthened the alliance with the Rajputs. rebellions, and further expansion of the Mughal Empire. The new system of administration introduced by Akbar, as described above, implied a tightening of the administrative machinery, greater control over the nobles, and more attention to the interests of the people. It was therefore not the linking of many nobles' sentiments of regional independence was still strong, particularly in areas such as Gujarat, Bengal, and Bihar, all of which had a long tradition of forming separate kingdoms. In Rajasthan, Rana Pratap's struggle for freedom was continuing apace. In this situation, Akbar had to deal with a series of rebellions. Gujarat remained in a state of unrest for 2 years due to a bid for freedom by a representative of the old ruling dynasty. The most serious rebellion during the period was in Bengal and Bihar, which extended to Jaunpur. The main cause of the rebellion was the strict enforcement of the Dhag system or branding of the horses of the jagirdars and strict accounting of their income. The discontent was fanned by some religious divines who were unhappy with Akbar's liberal views and his policy of resuming the large revenue free grants of land which had been obtained by them, sometimes illegally. Akbar's half brother Mirza Hakim, the ruler of Kabul, also abetted the rebellion and held out the hope of invading the Punjab at a suitable time in order to help. A large number of Afghans in the eastern parts were sullen at the loss of Afghan power and were ever ready to join a rebellion. India, at the death of Akbar. Okay. The rebellion kept the empire distracted for almost 2 years, 1580 to 81, and Akbar was faced with a very difficult and delicate situation. Due to the mishandling of the situation by local officials, Bengal and almost the whole of Bihar passed into the hands of the rebels, who proclaimed Mirza Hakim as their ruler. They even got a religious divine to issue a fatwa calling on the faithful to take the field against Akbar. Akbar did not lose his nerve. He dispatched a force under Todhar Mal against Bihar and Bengal, and another under Rajaman Singh to check the expected attack by Mirza Hakim. Todhar Mal proceeded with great vigor and tact and brought the situation in the east under control before Mirza Hakim's invasion took place. Mirza Hakim advanced on Lahore with 15,000 horses but could not take the city due to the south stout defense by Razaman Singh and Bhagwan Das. His hopes that a large number of nobles in the Punjab would rebel and join him were also believed. Meanwhile, Akbar marched on Lahore with a well disciplined force of 50,000 horses. Mirza Hakim had no option but to beat a hasty retreat. Akbar crowned his success by marching to Kabul 1581. Since Mirza Hakim refused to accept Akbar's sovereignty or to come to pay personal allegiance to him, and the Indian nobles and soldiers were becoming restive, Akbar handed over Kabul to his sisters before returning to India. The handing, the handling of over of a kingdom to a woman was symbolic of Akbar's broad-mindedness and liberalism. Akbar's triumph over his opponents was not only a personal success but also showed that a new system was beginning to strike roots. Akbar was now free to think of the further expansion of his empire. He was drawn to the Deccan, in which he had long been interested. But before he could do anything, the situation in the northwest claimed his attention again. Abdul Khan Uzbek, the hereditary enemy of the Mughals, had been gradually gathering strength in Central Asia. In 1584, he overran Badkhshan, which had been ruled by the Timurids. Kabul appeared to be next on the list. Both Mirza Hakim and the Timurid princes ousted from Badakhshan now appealed to Akbar for help. But before he could act, Mirza Hakim died due to excessive drinking, leaving Kabul in a state of disturbance. Akbar now ordered Man Singh to march to Kabul and himself moved to Attock on the river Indus. In order to block all roads to the Uzbeks, he sent expeditions against Kashmir 1586 and against Balochistan The whole of Kashmir, including Ladakh and Balochistan, called Tibet Kurd and Tibet Buzurg, came under Mughal domination, and a doctor of the chief of Balochistan was married to young Salim. Expeditions were also sent to clear the Khyber Pass, which had been blocked by rebellious tribesmen. In an expedition against them, Raja Birbal, the favorite of Akbar, lost his life. But the Afghan tribesmen were gradually forced to submit. The consolidation of the Northwest and fixing the scientific frontier of the empire were two of the major contributions of Akbar. His conquest of Sindh 1590 also opened the trade down the river Indus for Punjab. Akbar stayed at Lahore till 1598 when the death of Abdullah Uzbek finally removed the threat from the side of the Uzbeks. After settling the affairs of the northwest, Akbar turned his attention towards the affairs of eastern and western India and the Deccan. Odisha, which was at the time under the domination of Afghan chiefs, was conquered by Rajman Singh, who was the Mughal governor of Bengal. Man Singh also conquered Cooch Bihar and parts of East Bengal, including Dhaka. Mirza Aziz Koka, the foster brother of Akbar, conquered Kathiawar in the west. Khan-i Khanum Munim Khan was deputed to the Deccan along with the Prince Murad. The developments in the Deccan would be dealt with in separate chapters. Suffice it to say here that by the turn of the century, Mughal control had been extended up to Ahmednagar, bringing the Mughals into direct contact with the Marathas for the first time. Thus, the political integration of North India had been achieved by the turn of the century, and the Mughals had started the penetration of the Deccan. But what was even more important was that the culture and emotion integration of the people within this vast empire had developed apace. Towards integration, state, religion, and social reforms, we have seen how during the 15th century a number of rulers in the different parts of the country had tried to promote greater understanding between the Hindus and the Muslims by having secular and religious literature in Sanskrit translated into Persian, by giving patronage to local languages and literature, by adopting a more liberal policy of religious toleration, and in some cases by giving important jobs including service at the court and in the army to the Hindus. We have also seen how a remarkable series of popular saints such as Kabir, Chaitanya, and Nanak in different parts of the country emphasized the essential unity of Islam and Hinduism and laid stress on a religion based on love and devotion rather than one based on rituals or a literal interpretation of revealed books. They thus created the atmosphere in which liberal sentiments and views could grow and religious narrowness began to be looked down upon. This was the atmosphere in which Akbar was born and reared. One of the first actions that Akbar took after he had taken power into his own hands was to abolish the poll tax or jizya which the non-Muslims were required to pay in a Muslim state. Although it was not a heavy tax, it was disliked because it made a distinction between subject and subject. At the same time, Akbar abolished the pilgrim tax on bathing at holy places such as Prayag, Benares, etc. He also abolished the practice of forcibly converting prisoners of war to Islam. This laid the essential foundation of an empire based on equal rights to all citizens, irrespective of their religious beliefs. The liberal principles of the empire were strengthened by bringing able Hindus into the nobility. While most of these were Rajput Rajas, many of whom entered into matrimonial relations with Akbar and with whom he had established a personal relationship, mansabs were given to others also on the basis of their competence. Among the later, the ablashed and the most well known were Todar Mal, an expert in revenue affairs who rose to the post of Diwan, and Birbal, who was a personal favorite of the emperor. There were others such as Rai Patar Das, entitled as Bikramajit. Akbar's attitude towards his Hindu subjects is closely linked with his views on how a sovereign should behave towards his subjects. These views, which have been carefully explained by Akbar's biographer Abul Fazl, were an amalgam of Timurid, Persian, and Indian ideas of sovereignty. According to Abul Fazl, the office of a true ruler was a very responsible one, which depended on divine illumination. Fard I Izadi. Hence, no one could stand between God and a true ruler. A true ruler was distinguished by a paternal love towards his subjects without disinterestation of sect or creed, a large heart so that the wishes of great and small are attended to, and prayer and devotion and a daily increasing trust in God, who is considered the real ruler. It was also the duty of the ruler to maintain equilibrium in society by not allowing people of one rank of profession to interfere in the duties and obligations of another. Above all, he was not to allow the dust of sectarian strife to rise. All these together constituted what has been called the policy of sulkhul or peace to all. Akbar was deeply interested in religion and philosophy. At the outset, Akbar was an Orthodox Muslim. He paid great deference to the leading Qazi of the state, Abdul Nabi Khan, who held the post of Sadr us Sadr. On one occasion, Akbar even carried his slippers for him. But by the time Akbar reached adulthood, mysticism, which was being preached across the length and breadth of the country, began to influence him. We are told that he spent whole nights in thoughts of God, continually pronounced his name, and in gratitude for his success. He would sit many a morning alone in prayer and contemplation on a large flagstone of an old building near his palace in Agra. Gradually, he turned away from the path of narrow orthodoxy. He had already abolished the jizya and pilgrim tax. As we have seen, he gathered at the court a band of talented people with liberal ideas. The most noted among these were Abul Fazl and his brother Faizi, who, along with their father, who was a noted scholar, has been persecuted by the mullahs for having sympathy for Mahdavi Mahdavi ideas, to which the orthodox elements were strongly opposite. Another was a Brahman, Mahesh Das, who was given the title of Raja Birbal and was a constant companion of Akbar. Companion of Akbar. In 1575, Akbar built a hall called Ibadat Khana, or the Hall of Prayer, at this new capital, Fatehpur Sikri. To this he called selected theologians, mystics, and those among his courtiers and nobles who were known for their scholarship and intellectual attainments. Akbar discussed religious and spiritual topics with them. He frequently said, "My sole object, O wise mullahs, is to ascertain truth, to find out and disclose the principles of a genuine religion." The proceedings at first were confined to the Muslims. They were hardly orderly. The mullahs wrangled, shouted, and abused each other even in the presence of the emperor. The behavior of the mullahs, their pride and conceit in their learning, disgusted Akbar and further alienated him from them. At this stage, Akbar opened a Ibadat Khana to people of all religions: Christians, Zoroastrians, Hindus, Jains, even atheists. This broadened the discussion, and debates began even on issues on which all Muslims were agreed, such as whether the Quran was the last revealed book and Muhammad its prophet, resurrection, nature of God, etc. This horrified the theologians, and all kinds of rumors began to circulate about Akbar's desire to forsake Islam. As a modern historian of repute, R.P. Tripathi says, the patience and open mindedness of Akbar was construed in a variety of ways by persons of different faiths. Instead of bringing credit, the Ibatakhana brought growing discredit. At this time, an inquiry was conducted into the affairs of the chief Sadr, Abdul Nabhi, who was found to be extremely corrupt and tyrannical in his dealings in the distribution of charitable lands. Madhad Aimash, he has amassed wealth in other corrupt ways as well. He was a bigot and had inflicted the punishment of death on the Shias and on a Brahman of Mathura for their beliefs. At first, Abdul Nabi was sheared of his power, and Sardars were appointed in every province for distributing charitable lands. Soon he was dismissed and ordered to proceed to Mecca for Hajj. At about the same time, in 1580, a rebellion broke out in the east. A number of fatwas were given by the Qazis declaring Akbar a heretic. Akbar suppressed the rebellion and gave drastic punishment to the Qazis. To further strengthen his position in dealing with her, Mullahs Akbar also issued a declaration or Maharjar which asserted that if there were conflicting views among those who were considered fit to interpret the Quran, that is, Mujtahidis, Akbar, by virtue of being a most just and wise king, and his rank being higher in the eyes of God than of the Mujtahidis, was entitled to choose any one of the interpretations which would be of benefit to the nation and in the interest of good order. Further, if Akbar issued a new order in conformity with the Quran and calculated to benefit the nation, all should be bound by it. The declaration, which was signed by the leading ulamas, had been wrongly called a decree of infallibility. Akbar claimed the right to choose only when there was a difference of opinion among those qualified to interpret the Quran. At a time when there were bloody conflicts between the Shias, the Sunnis, and the Mahdavis in different parts of the country, Akbar wanted the widest toleration. There is little doubt that the Masdar had a salutary effect in establishing the religious situation in the empire. But Akbar was less successful in his effort to find a meeting ground between the votaries of different religions in the country. The debates in the Ibadata Khana had not led to a better understanding between different religions, but to greater bitterness, as the representatives of each religion denounced the others and tried to prove that their religion was superior to others. Hence, in 1582, Akbar discontinued the debates in the Ibadat Khana, but he did not give up his quest for truth. Even this bitter critic, Badayuni, says night and day people did nothing but inquire and investigate. Akbar invited Purushottam and Devi to expound the doctrines of Hinduism and Maharji Rana to explain the doctrines of Zoroastrianism. He met some Portuguese person in order to understand the Christian doctrines better. He sent an embassy to Goa, requesting them to send two learned missionaries to his court. The Portuguese sent Aquaviva and Montserrat, who remained at Akbar's court for almost 3 years and have left a valuable account. But their hope of converting Akbar to Christianity never had any basis. Akbar came in touch with the Jains also, and at his instance, the leading Jain saint of Kathiawar, Hira Vijaya Suri, spent a couple of years at Akbar's court. Contacts with the leaders of various religions, listening to their learned works, and meetings with the Sufi saints and yogis gradually convinced Akbar that while there were differences of sect and creed, all religions had a number of good points which were obscured in the heat of controversy. He felt that if the good points of various religions were emphasized, an atmosphere of harmony and amity would prevail, which would be for the good of the country. Further, he felt that behind all the multiplicity of names and forms, there was but one God. As a Badayuni observer, as a result of all the influences which were brought to bear on his majesty, there grew gradually as the outline of a stone. The conviction in his heart that there were some sensible men in all religions, if some true knowledge was thus everywhere to be found, why should truth be confined to one religion? Badayuni asserts that as a result, Akbar gradually turned away from Islam and set up a new religion, which was compounded of many existing religions Hinduism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, etc. However, modern historians are not inclined to accept this view and think the Bhadayuni has exaggerated. There is little evidence to prove that Akbar intended or actually promulgated a new religion. The word used by Abul Fazl and Bhadayuni for the so called new path was Tawhid I Ilahi, which literally means divine monotheism. The Tawhid I Ilahi was really an order of the Sufistic type, those who were willing to join and whom the emperor approved were allowed to become members. Sunday was fixed as the day for initiation. The novice placed his head at the feet of the emperor, who raised him up and gave him the formula called Shast in the Sufi terminology, which he was to repeat and concentrate upon. This contained Akbar's favorite motto, Allah O Akbar, or God is great. The initiates were to abstain from meat as far as possible, at least in the month of their birth, give a sumptuous feast and alms on their birthday. There were no sacred books or scriptures, no priestly class, no place of worship or rituals and ceremonies except the initiation. Tawhid-i-Ilahi should not be confused with Akbar selecting a small group of trusted nobles who were totally devoted to him. According to Badayuni, those selected were to promise sacrifice of property, life, honor, and religion. Giving up religion apparently meant giving up attachment to the narrow concepts and observances, which again was in keeping with the Sufi ideas. However, many leading nobles, including all the great Hindu nobles except Birbal, declined to join. The number of this group, as far as we know, amounted to about 18 only, while those who were enrolled as disciples of Akbar amounted to thousands. Akbar did not use force, nor was money used for enrolling displaced or murids. In enrolling murids, Akbar evidently had some political purpose also. He wanted a band of nobles and others who would be personally loyal to him and support him in his concept of a state based on sul aikul, that is equal toleration of and respect for all sections irrespective of their religious beliefs. Orthodox elements such as Bhadayuni neither sympathized with nor supported such a state. Bhadayuni ascribes this move of Akbar to his head being turned by many unworthy flatterers and panegyrists who suggested to him that he was the incident I Kamil or the perfect man of the age. It was at their instance that Akbar initiated the ceremony of pabos or kissing the floor before the Savarchan, a ceremony which was previously reserved for God. There were many precedents of rulers trying to combine temporal and spiritual powers in their person. Abul Fazl says that it was natural for people to turn to their ruler for spiritual guidance and that Akbar was well qualified to lead the people to spiritual bliss and to establish harmony among varying creeds. The Tawhid I Ilahi virtually died with Akbar, though the practice of enrolling murids and giving them a shast was continued for some time by Jahangir. However, Akbar's attempt to tie the nobles to the emperor through personal bonds succeeded, many nobles continuing to pride themselves as being the banda or slaves or murids of the emperors. Also, by and large, the nobles did not support elements propagating religious orthodoxy in social and political matters. However, the belief of looking upon the king as someone having miraculous powers so that people could be cured by the king's touch or by his breathing upon a pot of water continued. Even an orthodox ruler such as Aurangzeb could not shake off his belief. Akbar tried to emphasize the concept of sul-aikul or peace and harmony among religions in other ways as well. He set up a big translation department for translating works in Sanskrit, Arabic, Greek, etc. into Persian. Thus, the Singhasan Battisi, the Atharva Veda and the Bible were taken up first for translation. These were followed by the Mahabharata, the Gita, and the Ramayana. Many others, including the Panchatantra and works of geography, were also translated. The Quran was also translated into Persian, perhaps for the first time. Akbar also introduced a number of social and educational reforms. He stopped sati, the burning of a widow, unless she herself of her own free will persistently decided widows of tender age who had not shared a bed with their husbands were not to be burned at all. Widow remarriage was also legalized. Akbar was against anyone having more than one wife unless the first wife was barren. The age of marriage was raised to 14 for girls and 16 for boys. The scale of wines and spirits was restricted. Not all these steps were, however, successful. As we know, the success of social legislation depends largely on the willing cooperation of the people. Akbar was living in an age of superstition, and it seems that his social reforms had only limited success. Akbar also revised the educational syllabus, laying more emphasis on moral education and mathematics, and on secular subjects such as agriculture, geometry, astronomy, rules of government, logic, history, etc. He also gave patronage to artists, poets, painters, and musicians, so much so that his court became famous for the galaxy of renowned people known as the Navratna. Thus, under Akbar, the state became essentially secular, liberal, and enlightened in social matters and a promoter of cultural integration. Thank you.